What's going on? This is City Chapters Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby J. Back from a little holiday break. Got to shout out Spokecast for sponsoring my podcast and making this all possible. So shout out Brendan if you guys want to get in the podcast game. He's your guy. And once again, that's Spokecast. Just look them up and they can get you hooked up with everything you would need to start your own podcast. Today, we got Trent Maier on. So this chapter's with my friend, client, with Third Kind Design. I've been doing stuff for his company, Trailbreaker Cider, for a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. Me and him have developed just a cool relationship over those years, and always like talking to him. So it's just natural that we would have him on here. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. Once again, this chapter's with Trent Maier from Trailbreaker Cider.
Yes, sir.
What's going on, Trent?
Not much. How are you?
Doing well, man.
We've already been talking, so this...
Yeah, we've been talking off camera, you know, coming into this new year with a few little difficulties, but also like some things that I'm excited for, some changes that ultimately I think needed to happen. So I'm excited to kind of start implementing some of these changes. And,
I'm really excited because what was it, about a month ago we finalized an order on some shirts. Bobby J swag here.
Yeah.
But we got talking after that, and I think that's what spurred some of this getting together. So the new year, I'm really interested to see what this year brings you. I'm really curious.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna start doing some. Not to get too far off on me, but you know, just for people that wonder maybe what's going on with me, because it's been a little bit since I had an interview. I'm gonna try some new therapy techniques. One is hypnotherapy. Just kind of help me uproot some of this like trauma that I've sustained that I keep battling with and looping past. And I've read so many books and those kinds of things have helped me. But yeah, I'm starting off this year with some hypnotherapy, which is like, some people are like, whoa, you know what I mean? But I feel like after my research and the hypnotherapist that I selected, that this is the right fit for me, because it just, I need help with healing this trauma, this guilt, this shame, this stuff that I've been through. So I'm excited to see how that impacts me, because I've done talk therapy, read all these books, and I have the knowledge. I can identify the problems, but I can't seem to figure out how to fix it, you know, or
you and I
always
talk about business.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into that, which is good. But I'm really curious where even your open-mindedness to some of this idea of doing and pursuing these things, what that does for your business acumen or you know, your trajectory there, whatever that is. And I think that's a good start for anything as you start to kind of shake things up a little bit. You're primed for that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is for me. It's like I gotta do something different this year, and I've been feeling this calling to like seek different healing modalities, especially within psychology, and you know, I'm just at a place where I got like nothing to lose. Like I'm
like beyond curiosity.
Yeah,
you're like now I'm past curious. Like I want to try.
Yeah, I think it's coming from a place of necessity too. I'm sick of just churning the hamster wheel of just doing okay, and like I think a lot of people kind of admire what I do, but where I'm at and the lack of where I've been meeting my goals, like the books and different things, there's just something that's been kind of like holding me back. And my hypnotherapist explained it this way, like based upon trauma and these different things you went through as a child and things that I went through, you know, as an adult and a teenager. And, you know, a lot of people know my backstory there, but I was really into a dark lifestyle for a while, a lot of street life stuff, did a lot of things that I'm not proud of, and it's definitely stuck with me. And then I've had a lot of things happen to me, violent things, been through a lot of violent encounters, and sustained a lot of violent damage. So
you're maybe seeing how that has shaped you today.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, how do you change the future from that?
Well, it's just like, you think you do the work and that you can like heal yourself by yourself. And I'm not saying that's not possible, but the thing is like, I think that I'm okay and I'll go for some time, and then ultimately behaviors start coming back.
Comes back.
Yeah. And the self-sabotage pattern ends up always resurfacing. I end up going through something very similar as I have before, you know, whether that's someone sucker punching me. That seems to be something that happens to me a lot. Someone close to me wants to sucker punch me because of jealousy or whatever the situation is. That's happened to me from 3 people in my life.
You find yourself in that scenario over and over.
Yep.
Same thing happens, and then this happens, and then it cost me this, and
and
what am I doing?
Yeah, and it's like every time I get hot, I figure a way to cool myself way, way down. And so it's like I said, I can identify the problems, but I can't find that way into my subconscious to unlock it. I do cold plunges, I work out, I hit the gym often, and that helps. That's like a short alleviation. Yeah. But this underlying...
Well, it's those things are also tools, right? They've gotten you to understand more, or maybe through finding some of your limits, because I can relate to some of that same stuff too. Mm-hmm. But you're, tapping into that, and healing is a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Healing is like self-forgiveness and all these terms that are all very cliche, but, not all of us can sit in front of somebody and make that connection and change our behavior after either. And that, I'm kind of curious, because that's
I'm curious too.
Very experimental, but maybe not so. I think experimental is the wrong word. Maybe that gives it such a out there connotation. Just unknown, maybe, or underutilized, certainly.
Underutilized, I would say. I mean, there's a lot that goes into having a guide, essentially, for you to heal. And when you do talk therapy, it's not really that they're guiding you. They're just kind of letting you talk your shit out with them, and then they can kind of give you some insights maybe, or some methods maybe to help you. But like hypnotherapy is about being guided into reprogramming your mind to what it is that you want to attain. And anyway, it's just like, she had a good analogy she used. It's like, she's like, you sound like the kind of person that's always trying to charge forward, but you can't get where you want to go. And that's because you have a rope tied to you that has a boat anchor that just keeps digging itself further and further. And the harder that you keep, and the longer you've been trying to pull on that rope, the more you've been getting tired, and your willpower is depleting. And that's how it feels, like this resistance that has built up on me because I haven't healed and really figured out a way to let go of this trauma and these ultimately bad things that maybe I still think that I'm past and I don't carry shame over, but it obviously is resurfacing based upon how I'll make sure that I don't get to a place where I can ultimately be very happy with myself or happy with my businesses or whatever. And, I am going to do whatever I gotta fucking do to get successful, in my eyes, of what I see I want to attain in my life, because I'm never going to give up, but I also know I've been trying to do it all by myself for over these, for a long time now. Been trying to think.
Very independent spirit. You come across as that, as somebody.
I am.
We've spent time together, but not lots of time, right? Like your personal acquaintances, but I can just tell that vibe from the get-go.
Yeah.
And some of our conversations have supported that, I suppose. But this is going to be a good year.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think this is kind of exciting to hear for me. I get a kick out of that.
It's exciting for me too. I'm like, is it really going to be the answer? I have a lot of, for some reason in my intuition, which my intuition hasn't been guiding me into very many places lately, but it did guide me to this. And my intuition is telling me like, this is something that I need to do. It's been something that's been in the back of my head for years now. Yeah. But I was just like, that shit's kind of like.
Well, you have a vision for yourself that is positive. not just positive, like good for you, but like forward moving. I think you seem to be somebody who is more interested in the future than the past.
For
but
sure.
with a traumatic past, it's not as easy as saying that.
No.
Right? For like real life actions and shaping and eliminating, quite frankly, sometimes and I've been there too, but the fuck ups that come along with it is, it's good that you're this conscious about it as somebody who's a little older and would like the mentor cap for a second. Cause I think that you're onto something. How you get there, that's to be determined. But I think the consciousness of it is as important as anything. Give yourself some credit for that.
No, and I do.
Because you've changed behaviors.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, in the short time I've known you, I believe this is obvious.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. I appreciate that acknowledgement because I've done a lot of work. But like you said, I have the consciousness, but the programming in my subconscious, that is what I think
the guide element is really important. I mean, any therapy is a version of that, right? I would say.
I think so. I mean,
even
I don't want to take away
is a version of that, I think.
Right.
But
yeah.
Self-therapy is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. So anyway, there we go. There's a little bit about me. Let's get into Trent. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anybody? I'll talk about the things with hypnotherapy because I start next week. And I'll probably share about some of that in a side note. And so if anybody else is interested in the benefits that I see, or maybe I don't know. I'm praying that I do, but that's kind of a new journey for me.
I want to have a conversation with you within a couple of days of your first couple.
Yeah, because I do 5. I'm going to do 5
sometimes the first time you do something, it's like you don't even realize what you're doing till like the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I think and then it's more meaningful.
Yeah. It's like a 3-month program that I'm doing with this lady. She's local in Spokane, so I'll do the sessions of hypnotherapy live with her at her place. And then we do like some coaching sessions, and there's some like modules and stuff learning modules she put together. And
cool.
So I'm excited. I really like the lady's energy. Just, as soon as I found her website and stuff, I was like, this is the person, It felt just in my heart like, yep. And then talking to her yesterday, like she's just a kind of person that, she's, I think, further evolved than me in certain ways for sure. And consciousness, just by the way I was talking to her and the way she would respond, I was like, and that's what I need, A lot of times I can't connect with people about the way that I think, and I do, but it's rare, know, and so just knowing that, I feel like, she's going to be maybe a mentor to me during this time I'm with her, because she's a little older, I believe, than me, and just seems to have like a lot of wisdom and an understanding of like, too, like I've always had this belief like you can create an amazing life for yourself. Like everything doesn't need to be so fucked up and hard, and a lot of us are just accepted that that's the way life is. And even if it is hard, like learning to be in a way to be able to deal with that hardship with a way deeper understanding of that, not feeling like a victim when that happens to you. And that's a place I want to get to and believe I can. And, I believe I can achieve all the things I want to in life. But I've just feel like I've been prohibited, and I've been trying to identify what that is. And recently I've been reading more books about psychology. One is about the psychology of money, the secrets of the millionaire mind. And that initially right away talks about like, if you cannot attain finances, wealth, like those kinds of things, it's because you have a financial blueprint in your subconscious that believes either money's evil or believes money is not good, or, like these different things that your parents ingrained in you as a child, or whatever you learned about money as a kid. And you have to learn how to rewrite that in your subconscious mind so that it starts attracting money and you
question.
Don't. Yeah. And so already right there is like a part of...
Wait, so this could be true for money.
Yeah.
This could also be true for other facets of our life, right? And our understanding of how we fit in with the world around us. And to your earlier, the thing you said, the happiness element, that is obviously something we're also subconsciously trying to achieve.
Yeah.
We think.
And at the same time, I've just finished it. I was reading this book, Outwitting the Devil, by Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, which is, like one of the number one best-selling books about attaining wealth. It's basically the law of attraction. But this book, Outwitting the Devil, is more about him. And he claims to have basically tracked down the devil and interviewed him. But basically the claim of the devil is that he only exists in your mind. Mm-hmm. He's not a physical being. He exists only in your mind. He is the negative energy in the universe, and he can, influence your mind with negative thinking and thoughts.
This whole thing could have just been a big metaphor.
It was, and he claims
the whole God and devil. It's possible that they were just trying to paint a picture of what life is like,
left
and
mind,
where
right
you should,
mind.
Try to. That's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic, and he says that in the book. He's like, whether I really talk to the devil or whether this is just this deep psychology state that I accessed, I don't know, but it felt real, and this is what our conversation was essentially is how he explains it. But basically, the devil in this book and how he explains his tactics of how he wins people's souls or whatever is like all this dark shit that I deal with, like these feelings that I deal with, using tactics of obviously fear, all these different things that are like deep rooted that he can use to basically make you a drifter in life and keep you from having a definite purpose, which is something that I've lost. I don't have this definite purpose at the moment. I'm like always dabbling with it, and that's like drifting. I'm drifting on it, and I need to have a definite purpose with my businesses, my aims. And so coming into this year, it's like, that's part of what I'm telling my hypnotherapist.
Just know that as you say this, I'm experiencing like maybe a further version of the same kind of thought process. Recently talking to a mentor that just kind of randomly met, but really connected with. And so we had subsequent conversations and got to some of the same points, like, in some of the business frustrations or day-to-day stuff, or even some of my long-term thinking with Trailbreaker and what we're trying to do, or some other projects that I have in irons in the fire. He brought it back. He said, we need to define what I say is what done looks like, right? Let's define what the real goals here are and how you can shape some of this around that. You need to start there. And I've led groups sort of, or help lead groups, I should say, that try to get to that for business organizations, but never really think about it for yourself, right? You never think about all the stuff you learn in the outside world and how to start applying that inward, that being a big one of what are you driving towards? What are your goals? How do you start aligning all of your life around that? And when you don't have that, which quite frankly, a lot of us have versions of that, right? And, the number of people I hear say things like, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and they're in their 50s, right? That kind of mindset, many people struggle with.
For sure.
But they also figure out ways to make it, they have some goals. They're being a little facetious when they say that, if they're also quite happy, right? And when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're not there yet. That's the other thing to remember. You're just not there yet. Like, this is part of the process.
Yeah, that's something.
You're in the middle of the process, expectedly so.
Yeah.
Give yourself a little break too.
I'm trying. That's something that I've definitely am trying to learn and give myself a break, because ultimately this path that I'm on was a lot longer than I anticipated. And I think, honestly, I'm just a little lost right now, and that's okay. You know what I mean? And like I had this analogy before, like when you kind of go off the main path and you just take your machete and you just start hacking your way off into the forest thinking you're going to go find the temple of gold.
Conquer the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're just so far in the forest. You're like, where the hell am I? I don't know how I'd even get out of here.
Why did I do that? Yeah. God, I was so in a hurry to run the wrong direction.
Yeah. And how the hell did I get here? And I can't figure out how to get out. So, and I think that's part of the hero's journey or whatever. Not to say that I'm a hero, but maybe I am. No, I'm just, but no, seriously.
No, I mean, you have to put yourself in like some of these roles if you want to.
Like you got to be the hero of your story.
It's called vision, right?
Fuck that, Trent. I am the hero. Let's go.
Speaking of heroes,
we're not talking about Trent anymore, people. It's going to be all about me. Let's go, Trent. Hype me up, baby. Let's go.
I love it. No, you know me. Like I am a curious mind.
Yeah,
you get me in a room and we just start talking.
No, I love it.
Tell you it's gonna. I don't know what you had on your agenda. I had nothing, so this is
me
the perfect.
Too. I actually came into this one specifically like I'm not gonna prepare anything for it. I'm just gonna go show up and talk to Trent because I know whatever we talk about will be good.
Yeah, we've had. I don't know how. Like from our very first meeting, we had some very deep conversations and had a similar connection that you were describing before, but. Just seem like on the same wavelength. So it's all good.
Well, yeah, man, you just this is a perfect time to transition for real though.
Yeah.
You just got great energy. You know, you are even though we have only spent very really in the scheme of things short amount of time together, but every time we do have the time, we always have a great conversation.
Yes.
Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're pretty long ones or a couple hours.
You more so than a lot of people in my life, but I tend to have I tell people like I don't have an off button when it comes to like conversational engagement, especially.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember names very well.
Me
but
too.
What I remember is like faces and stories. So I could tell you everything you told me the first time we talked, but I might not remember your name, you know, if I saw you 2 years later. I mean, there's a limit to that, but I appreciate that. I know it's, usually it's very transactional when you're in business, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time that my brewer friends and everybody, we just hand each other checks when we're buying stuff from each other, but you know, we would love to hang out, but we're often busy doing our own things, right? And that's great. That's kind of why we do it, right? But it also, like most of my friends are people I work with. And the working relationships I have are like so I'm sure I could go through the story of Trailbreaker here in a second, but before I get into that, during that process, I think I learned a lot about myself through that, but one of the things I learned is that connectivity to people is a huge strength of mine, and so that is why I am where I'm at, wherever that is, you know, good, bad, or whatever your interpretation might be. I've gained acceptance with that, right? And I embrace that now, and it's led to more opportunities like I thought I would have in my life, and you know, ones that are more meaningful. And I've tried to find meaning with every little interaction I have. And you know, I think for a long time, what I always struggled with, and I think a lot of people struggle with, is, you know, people think you're making your whole life about work is somehow this bad thing. Right. And when I tell people, I'm like, you know, the reality is some of the happiest people I know or I've ever met have a good balance, a work-life balance, but they don't turn away from that. Right. They embrace their work life as part of their personal life. And the harder you try to keep that separate, the more, you know, especially as you rise in life and maybe in your role, it's harder and harder to do that. And because so much of your time is committed to for certain levels of success, depending on what you're doing. And so for me, I just embraced it.
Yeah.
And I just said, and part of that was also picking, you know, to work for yourself gives you the opportunity to do that. When you're working for somebody else, I get that's, or at a company with nothing wrong with that, but it's harder to do that.
Yeah.
I think because I tell people that I don't feel like I'm working when I am working. And so it becomes easier to embrace that when you don't feel like it's a grind on your life.
Whoa,
and so the secret is finding a job that you really love to do, right?
Yeah.
Which is, again, back to what we were just saying, for most people, an impossibility. I am very, very, very lucky in life that I have kind of two occupations, one that I used to hate but now love, and one that I've just always loved and has turned into a business. So that's very unique. I can't say the magic recipe. I think it just better lucky than good is what I usually say. But I think a lot of it was and still is figuring those things out. It clicked in my head how to do it, why to do it, and the why to do it was maybe more important than anything. And that was, you have to turn off some of those wants and desires switches when you decide to do something for your long-term benefits, right? You have to turn off I want the new this, I want the new that, I want this, I want that in my life. You got to, learn how to, for me, that's what I had to do. I had to shut off some of that stuff and focus on what was most important. And you talk about a relationship with money and that kind of thing, that played into it too. Mm-hmm. So they may not know what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, just while we're talking about that, what was like what is one of your strongest whys in pursuing being a business owner?
So I think for me, the first why was like the most obvious why, which is the word hate my job, but I didn't hate the work that I was doing. Mm-hmm. Like I was an automation engineer. I grew up in the Midwest and
what part of the Midwest?
Michigan.
Michigan.
So I'm a Spartan. I went to Michigan State right out of high school. I grew up just north of there. And then, most of the engineering jobs in that part of the country are associated with the auto industry, especially in the automation world, which I was in. I worked in a couple different facets of the auto industry, but mostly I found a niche. Turns out I'm very good at a couple of things related to my job. I will not dive into what that looks like on a technical level, but I remind people that I'm 40, I just turned 43, and right at my generation split, I didn't have, cell phones weren't even a thing until I was about halfway through college. Like didn't even exist. Mm-hmm. And so my whole childhood was, very old fashioned, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the memes with little kids not knowing things with our generation. Like there was a real technology shift about the time I was going through college and just out of college. So all the new innovation I was like diving into on like hardcore technical level. Things that are, as I was learning, are still what run our factories today. Mm. So I was learning all that at that time in the auto industry, and it's like a grind. 100-hour work weeks, because all of the work in the auto industry, from my vantage point, my job at least, got done in about 2 months of the year, the month of July and the month of December, because that's when they typically closed factories down for periods of time to do the kind of work that I did. So you spend all the time before that prepping for everything that you're going to go in, and then you go in and you've got 1 month, and that factory needs to be spitting cars out at the end of the month. And it was guys like me who sat there on the floor going, so highly stressful. But that was like in your 20s. I didn't know any different, so it was easy to kind of absorb. And I learned a lot about myself then in terms of being able to handle stressful situations reasonably well. Big level managers sitting over your shoulder trying to get you to get something working right, and you're just sitting there like, would you like to do this? Mm-hmm. But because of that schedule and the demands, what I really want to do is live in the Northwest. And I don't know why that is. I came out here when I was in college. I drove out to Seattle, down to Portland and back just for a road trip, and just always loved this part of the country since then. And so I started looking for jobs after a very difficult road stretch where I was down in Kansas City for like a month straight, working my ass off, quite frankly. The money was good, but at the time, but I really wanted something else, right? So I took a job down in Pullman at a company called Schweitzer Engineering. Not any correlation to your, probably
not the ski mountain.
Not the ski mountain.
But yeah, I know
but
about
they're
their company.
a tech company down there.
Don't they have an office in the valley here?
They bought a building, the old ITT Tech building, I think is what it was, out in the valley. They have offices there. I still have a lot of friends that work there. I lived in Pullman for 12 years, so before living here. So I took a job in engineering field in Pullman and quickly found myself in the same pattern where, I had this knack for, and my entire career as an engineer had been up until that point, this project's not doing very well. Trent, here it's yours. Flip it around, get it going, finish it, get it working. And it was all, but, which I always did. But when the only thing you're ever handed are problems, it's just like for somebody who has a personality that, just like the conversation piece I was talking about, like I can't not try to solve it, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And whether it's personal stuff, it could be team members not getting along, which is why the project wasn't going well, or it could be on a technical level. It could be financial, trying to figure out the best way through these things. So after 3 years roughly of doing that, I had a dream of always going to culinary school. And I don't know where that came from other than I just always really enjoyed cooking. My second job, one of my jobs in college was before food trucks were cool. They were at like state fairs and stuff, working next to carnival games and that kind of thing.
Right.
So I did that for money in the summer when I was in college, and I loved the cooking part. It just loved it. And the people that were in that kind of culture, I mean, that was a little different culture, but in the food industry, I always got along with, and just, at home, helping my mother cook, that kind of thing has always been of interest. So I went to culinary school for a bit, and then the rest kind of went from there. But I don't remember your original question, but you got a good early history there.
Yeah, no, you were building up to the reason why you started your own business, why you want to be a business owner.
So while working in Pullman, I think the most obvious thing was there were elements with the job. I think it was some conflict with, my boss at the time. I just didn't quite see eye to eye with, and I think, if I'm honest about it, I think my ambition and my skill set for certain things were maybe not aligned. And one of those skills is the politics of a workplace. The long and the short of it is I realized that I maybe want to try working for myself before I really settle in to working long-term for a company. That, by the way, Schweitzer Engineering is a great company.
Yeah.
And that was part of my conflict was this is a great company. What is it in my head? Like it's not the company, right? The company, I can never be so selfish as to think, some enormously successful company is wrong and I'm right? Whenever two parties depart, somebody's got to realize that it's them, right? It's you, not me kind of thing. And I think while it was maybe a little bit of both, my circumstances there were one in which I really wasn't happy with the trajectory I was on. And what is that, right? Well, yes, I can be a successful engineer. The retirement plan that they have there and their ESOP, there was no financial incentive to leave there anytime soon. But inside myself, I knew that I was getting close to 30 and I wanted to try some other things. And if I committed much longer, the reality of trying some other things was going to be never a good idea. It would be probably almost impossible financially if it went much further in my career there, just with the kind of roles that I would be taking on. And it's the kind of thing that once you start taking on certain leadership roles, you're really committing to the shape of an organization. And, once you're involved in that, the ability to just take that elsewhere gets a little bit diminished. And I had a little bit of foresight in that, and just in that looking around me and seeing nothing wrong with anybody that I was working with. But I was like, before I do that, I might want to try this. Still had enormous amount of passion for food. Quite frankly, I needed a break. Mm-hmm. And, the answer of why was, like I said, easily identifiable by I just didn't like my job.
Yeah.
But the real reason, in hindsight, I think, is some of what I'm saying in terms of I wasn't quite sure what I wanted, but I knew that there were other options. And I wanted to try some other things. And, I was living in Pullman too. So for me, at the time I was single guy. So, that is not exactly an ideal location for somebody who's about 30 who would like to visit some other cities here in the Northwest and spend some time elsewhere. So there was a little bit of a desire to take a break. And I quickly realized that I was really good at managing my own schedule. Like, I didn't need anybody motivating me. I was highly motivated. For what? I don't know. But I don't sleep in. Like, I go to bed early. Like, I was very regimented without any real purpose, right? I'm just basically going to a community college part-time school and work as many hours as I can to afford to do that.
Yeah.
While still keeping like my house and that kind of thing in Pullman at the time, but which ended up being a good thing, because in that time is when I came up with a harebrained idea to start a cidery. And the rest, as I say, is a little bit history, but for us at least. But it was a very formidable time, more in hindsight than in the moment. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you left your job. You were going back to school for a little bit. Mm-hmm. You have this idea for a cidery.
An idea for a cidery, and then I met a girl. Mm-hmm. And that
from Pullman?
Nope. So actually, I didn't meet a girl. That's a little bit. I met a girl again, which is now my wife. But right about this time, my business partner was a friend of mine in Pullman. He's a fellow engineer we didn't work together, but we worked at the same company. Mm-hmm. We just hung out together, and he was from Alaska, so camping and outdoor stuff. We had the same. He was single as well, so we could go down to Riggins and do big water blowout, or go camping, somewhere in the Northwest, and go screw off on the weekends whenever we could. Mm-hmm. And when I left for culinary school, he had just started a commercial building here down in Pullman. And his idea was, this guy was a little bit crazy. He was like, I don't want a house. I want a building that I can invent stuff in, and actually I can do whatever the hell I want in.
Yeah.
And if I have some friends that want to start a business, well, they can come in there and do that too. Maybe we'll figure it out. You can make me your janitor someday in exchange. And he said to me, I don't really have... He says, if I have a house, I'm going to want a shop, and I'm going to spend 100% of my time in the shop. Why even have the house? And I want I have hobbies. Like, I've got weird ideas and things I want to experiment, perpetual motion and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So when I moved away, he had just started that building, he and another friend of ours. And when I came home to visit and take care of some stuff with my home in town, and I saw him, and we were having a few beers or something, and I was like, so I'm thinking of starting a cidery. And he's like, I'm in. Like, instantly.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, let's put it in the building. He's like, that'd be perfect.
Dang.
And I'm like, okay. And so I went away, and he called me like a few days later. He's like, no, I'm serious. Are you serious about this? I was like, well, I've been looking at it. They just, I don't know. I was a hobby cider maker. So in Michigan, where I grew up, cider is very common, like a homebrew. Okay. In fact, there's orchards and stuff in the area. So,
right.
In fact, when I was in college, before we were, I give tours at Trailbreaker, and the line I use is, before I was old enough to buy alcohol, I learned how to make alcohol.
Yeah.
And the farmers would have somebody take a tank on the back of a truck, fill it with some unpasteurized juice, and they would just go around everybody's house and siphon it into the basement on one day in the fall. And everybody had like whiskey barrels. Mm-hmm. So our original name of our cidery was Whiskey Barrel Cider Company, because that's what we envisioned we were doing. That's how I always made it. When I was in Seattle, I moved in with this lady. She must have thought I was just like crazy or something. But I show up, I've got like, I don't know, a duffel bag of clothes and, you know, a bed and some furniture. And then I had a motorcycle and a 55-gallon wooden barrel that I told her I wanted to make cider in her basement. And she was like, sure. She was an eccentric lady who liked to drink wine in the evening, so we got along just fine. But
once that first batch came out, she's like, I love this idea.
Well, and so I was making this cider, and so Brian came over to visit me, and we were going to talk about the business for the first meeting, and we're just like, all right, what the hell do we have to do here? And I had never started a business before. His father had owned a couple businesses, so I think I kind of leaned on him with more of the knowledge, and I knew I had some research to do. But very, very, like, you've done this, right? The first thing you do, like, well, you know, Google literally, how do you start a business? And didn't look at any resources, just kind of started winging it. Well, in that meeting, his sister came to visit from Portland. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say we hit it off. Mm-hmm. And so we started the business, but 3.5 weeks after that, she and I also got married. So
after 3.5 weeks,
after 3.5 weeks of, I met her once before, years before. So we didn't exactly meet, but that altered like a lot of my frame of thought from, you know, culinary school, my priorities there, starting a business and like starting to think about that, like really think about that. And, but maybe more importantly, our agreement was that, and one of the reasons it was of interest to Brian to have me start a business with him, and I think he would openly admit this, was to have some help finishing the building and on the construction. So I basically started a new career in construction from that moment on too. I had done some work. My grandfather was a contractor, and my dad was the kind of dad that did most of the work around our house. So I was exposed to some of that, but not on this level of like a big steel building with all the things you see in like a building like this, right? And so that was like a total shift away from what I expected to be doing, but, you know, certainly welcomed it. And that curiosity element for me of learning that was very high. So, it was kind of an interesting transition into the owning a business world. And the first 2 years of owning a business was really building that building and building out the business physically, which is, I tell people, it's a little backwards how we did some of the things.
The Trailbreaker building that's in Liberty Lake now. Mm-hmm. And if you've made it this far, I didn't mention that earlier. Trailbreaker is in Liberty Lake.
Yep.
So,
so this wasn't that building, but this spurred all the knowledge that it took.
Your first building you built.
Yeah, we built that, and then we learned so much.
That was in Pullman.
Yep.
Initially, right?
Yep. Okay. That was in Pullman, and kind of an odd story with that. So, backing up just a step, move essentially with Stacy back to Pullman to kind of start things. She took a job with Schweitzer Engineering, so the company I had left, she went back there and worked for her brother, worked there as well.
Right.
So it was kind of it's a big company. There's probably 4,000 or 5,000 employees globally there. So based out of there.
Okay.
So yeah, good organization. So, we knew she kind of had a nice stable job there while I kind of helped pursue some of the wild, crazy, adventurous stuff. And we kind of got our finances in a situation. I mean, this is not easy to do, but I mean, I call us dirtbags because we basically are. I mean, we spent, 6 months living on a shop floor where our walls were made out of freaking bust those little tubs, like the plastic tubs, because everybody had all their stuff, and we were trying to build, the places where we're going to eventually live. There was some apartments connected
in
to
the
it.
Shop,
that was not so much for us, but I was waiting for a rental house to open back up that we owned, and it was my house that I had rented out, and then that burned down. So the tenant that was in it burned it down. So in the middle of this construction project, we have this. In fact, we were building it. We built a tasting room in town too. We didn't build it. We just remodeled a space and built a patio and stuff. If you ever go down to Pullman, actually, it was just down there a couple months ago. Red Card is a bar on I guess that's the south end of town. It's kind of like a whiskey bar now, and it's like a soccer bar. But they have whiskeys and stuff in there, and we basically built that out. And I hadn't been in there in many, many years. And when we had to move out of there for other reasons, that got turned into a couple different things over time. But it's a cool bar. If you go down there, you'll see the bar top. It's the first bar top I ever built. It's a concrete bar top. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Anyway, that building that we were in and we built for what wasn't Trailbreaker, was Whiskey Barrel Cider, and we had a tasting room in town, and it was going just fine. We kind of had some plans for maybe expanding our production a little bit. That building was starting to get used for some other things, and so we got a knock on the door from the neighboring airport, who came in and said, "Well, we understand you are looking to expand a little bit. We need to inform you that actually you're going to have to move. The airport is putting in a new runway, and you're going to have to move your facility per FAA guidelines," which we had heard many, many, many years before was a possibility, but not for maybe, it was in their like 60-year plan or something. So nothing immediate. And so that was a little bit of in hindsight, it was a very good thing, I think, just from, that's what Trailbreaker was born out of. Essentially, we had to sell that to them, and we took our little piece of that and kind of reinvested it into a new building, and then further invested into the facility that you see today out there.
So you guys have a facility by the Pullman Airport. They say you guys got to go.
Yep.
They pay you for your building
one
and
step
land.
Shy of what they call eminent domain, which is, for the public good.
Yeah.
Land needs to be acquired for some kind of public project.
Yeah.
And that, is historically
nothing you can do about it.
No, it's not really that debatable. It just historically it causes problems sometimes. In this case, it was very reasonable.
Yeah.
The FAA has a book that thick that I literally had to read, or portions of it. And there was an organization actually out of Spokane that helped kind of third party walk both groups through that regulation to make sure that everybody's done fairly. It's a federal thing, so it's it is. Well, it wasn't very convenient at the time. We realized that we really had to make some decisions as to whether or not this was something we wanted to really do, or not do, and there was no in between in terms of relocating at that point. We either had to double down, and more than double down, but
so why did you guys decide to leave Pullman completely and come to Liberty Lake?
That's a good question. It's kind of no, it's not controversial. Pullman is an interesting town
for sure. It definitely is.
I will say both my business partner Brian and I, and of course his sister is my wife, so she's obviously involved in the conversation, and Brian's wife also. They were not married yet, but they were well on their way to be married. Were all part of the conversation, and I think for other folks' careers, I'm the only one in this group of 4 people that dedicates all of my time to this company. So I had some ideas about where, including Pullman. We definitely were assuming Pullman at first but it's an interesting town in terms of we were very adamant that we wanted to buy some land. and own the land ourselves and reinvest that way. That was a big part of what we were doing with the start of this operation. We just didn't want to have to deal with being a tenant somewhere at this scale. We envisioned this growing, not, fitting into some space. And it just made the most sense. So land acquisition around there with where my vision for this was what you see at Trailbreaker, the restaurant experience, the outdoor lawn experience, the event center thing, lots of production space and expansion room. And so that we were kind of limited in terms of what the zoning areas in Pullman that would allow something like that, where we would want to be for where people could still get there easily. It wasn't really developed to that space. We looked, and quite frankly, the cost of lots that were available were not necessary. And it was just the market value of that. And a little bit of, we lived in Pullman for 12 years.
Yeah.
Pullman is a college town through and through. Yeah. And, while that's great, for our lifestyle and my wife's career and Brian's wife's career, Stephanie, there was some considerations for a larger city or other areas of the state even. Access to apples was really important. So getting apples to Pullman was not quite as easy as Spokane.
There's no apples out there.
So it just, it makes a more expensive product. So when you're competing on the shelf with national brands and other brands, most of the people are in Spokane, right? In Eastern Washington. So for us, I wanted access for our retail market in this area. And Liberty Lake we looked all over Spokane. And I was researching this for over a year where we were going to go. At least almost 2 years worth of time traveling all around the state, thinking about where we would want to be both personally, professionally, and of course for the cider operation. There was a few variables to manage there.
Yeah, definitely.
But Liberty Lake, so my father-in-law, we came up and went out to Airway Heights and looked at a couple buildings there for some things. And then last stop was going to be out in Liberty Lake and then take the back way home or something. And as soon as we drove in there, because, you get the closer you get to Idaho and the Rockies there, you start getting into the foothills. And he pulled into the town. He just said, "This is where you need to buy." This is beautiful. Why? And keep in mind, we were in the middle of industrial property out there, right? So there's a lot of industrial areas out there. So you're sitting there, you don't feel like you're in like a industrial park. And I think that was part of the appeal, was we could get a lot of the benefit for our production needs of being right off the highway, easily accessible, right on the state border. So if we ever decide to do things in Idaho, it's where a lot of growth is happening. Yeah. My market research suggested, there's no way of knowing, but I think the subsequent years proved pretty good prediction on what folks were saying out there.
Yeah, Liberty Lake's obviously grown a whole lot since you've been there too.
Yeah.
And Post Falls. So,
you're especially Post Falls.
Smack dab right there where a ton of growth is happening.
It was kind of like, I don't know, not to go back down this rabbit hole, but, when you think about what it's like to be happy, it was a similar thought. Like, you think about what it's like to have this all fill out around you and be awesome, right? And you're in the middle of an awesome spot. When we were building, it was kind of like, I don't know if this is, and then COVID hit and it was like, is this going to go the other way? Or it hasn't, but it's nice to see the growth around there. I think from our vantage point, that was like kind of a major factor. Not kind of, it was a major factor. An assumption that hopefully was going to prove true. So it's been good.
Yeah, and the facility you guys built out there, it's amazing. It's just such a cool building, Yeah. I've always, from the first time I ever went out there, it was like, dang. And then, you telling me you guys built it yourself too was another just layer on top of how cool the story is.
Yeah, and I think I probably told you then too, like, you look at it every day when you're doing it. I don't know. I imagine... And I've always felt, even just as a cider maker, I always have a lot in common with musicians and other artists, because I feel like there's and my father-in-law is not like what I would call an artistic person. He would not describe himself that way, but in construction, he is. And, we really didn't have very good, I made the plans and they were kind of like, we'll figure this out as we go. and it's kind of like it's not quite the same as artwork because it's highly technical in a lot of these ways, but
it's a form
and
of
codes
art,
and things
though.
like that
It's
you have to wrap your head around that you don't like. You're doing a lot of stuff not because it looks good, but because it has to be this dimension, right? And a lot of people don't realize how much of that was happening. But we went into it with just a really cool concept.
Yeah,
that was like, hey, let's build a little mini factory. We make everything from we start with apples and finished product goes out the door. It's an awesome little factory that 2 or 3 people run. It's not like a super labor intensive thing where we can do this pretty efficiently. And let's throw a big event center and restaurant in here at the same time and let people want to be in this stuff. They like being in the middle of what Dry Fly did over here was beautiful too. You feel like you're in it, you're over it. It gives you a different kind of perspective on it.
Yeah, definitely. It just like when you walk in, it's just cool. You have those huge glass pane windows that are, I don't know how tall, but to see into the back there and see the production facility. Did your engineering career and doing automobile factory design translate over to you designing your production?
More so than I probably realized.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things.
I didn't never think about it until you just said that.
When you know something, it's inherent with all of us that we automatically assume others around us know sort of the same thing we do, right? So when you're doing something and somebody's like, oh, you're a little surprised, or as you explain it, you make some assumptions that they know more than they actually do,
or they should know.
Yeah, not
should.
that they should,
No,
but you just assume that, right? It's just human nature.
Yeah.
And so in that, it was the same thing where I'm like, I don't know, this doesn't seem that complicated. I can figure this out, but I get that it was probably because of years of doing other stuff like that added up. I was not as conscious of it until maybe after the fact, as somebody wanted to do a tour right after we opened, and believe it or not, I don't actually like talking about myself very much. And so it made me kind of uncomfortable to like sit there and like tell the story. And I'm like, my mother-in-law was like, Trent, you need to. You do such a good job with it. You need to do this. It is for your benefit. Why are you? I'm like, okay, I get it. And I actually think our story's kind of a cool story. Like some of the stuff that, like I love the behind the scenes that I remember, with, family members helping do stuff and some of the design decisions and in our family, like there's so many debates about, like, everything is a debate in our family. Like our whole day revolves around debates, which is great. But it can be a little exhausting. And when you're on a really intense project that you have a lot of, all of our personal money tied into to get it done and do it, on a scale that we probably didn't even give credit to when we were doing it. Like, it just, I'm not great at, highlighting those things as well as maybe a book would or something like that if you were reading about it. But it was fun. It was a pretty cool project to never do again.
Yeah.
Is what I tell people. I'm like, we should have a Trailbreaker. I'm like, I just really don't know if I could dive in on that again, or I'm sure I could. I just don't know if there's any interest in that. And I don't know.
So this will be your one and only location is the plan right now?
I doubt. I think that's not necessarily true, but for me to like build a building like that again, I have no interest in doing that.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Like that. Like I was talking about the construction element. Yeah, I really loved. I mean, I would love to build a house someday, or that I would live in, or my brother-in-law, he's talking about building a house. I would love to help him build a house like or something. I mean, just like we've done on other buildings. And, our house burnt down in Pullman by no fault of our own. And because of the insurance being a little lighter than what, was needed to get the job done. It was just kind of like, well, I guess we do this ourselves and let's just do it. Let's figure it out. And, migrating those kinds of things and going through those projects now 2, 3, 4 times, it doesn't make me scared to do it. It's just like that box is fully checked in terms of, my brain kind of has checklists in it of things that I enjoy doing and things that I have filled that cup.
Yeah.
There's no need to do that unless there's...
You know what that's like and don't want to go back there if you can help it.
So if we were to put another location up, I would love that. But that's a whole nother business model, really. I think that would involve probably, not necessarily a different business model, but that would involve another construction company getting involved probably, and
to alleviate some of that pressure of
And we were talking earlier about some of the involvement I have with the Chamber of Commerce out in the Valley and downtown too with GSI. I've met a lot of folks, and I've learned more about how operations can expand in ways, thinking on a different level with construction companies. And my father-in-law and I have always talked about that, but I've never really given it like actual thought until very recently. And I certainly don't even know what that would look like. I do things slowly. I have a saying, I may not be good, but I sure am slow. No question.
Well, I think that's good. That's something that I've been forced to learn, is how to be slower in what I do and my actions, how I go about things. Because I've definitely been a person that's like, I think very trying to be very forceful in my life with what I do. Like, I'm going to force this thing to happen. And, I've learned for me that typically just backfires and just drains my energy, instead of just like being assertive, but moving with a more sure, just kind of definiteness in what I do. And instead of just being like, whoa, And
so like I've thought a lot recently about the balance between ambition and patience. Like, not patience like waiting, for the bathroom or something, but like patience like, okay, we'll get to that eventually, or that project, or, thinking more like years of time or space that you're thinking about patience over, right?
Yeah.
And also, maybe more importantly, reminding yourself or myself in many instances of what and when the goal was, right? I can still remember, I just in my own mind had like a 15-year window goal to be, I don't know, what I said was to replace my salary as an engineer working for somebody else. Like, I had 15 years to do that, right? And so let's say I started when I was 30, because I was roughly that age. So I'm 43 now. So I'm not even at that point yet. And so reminding myself that, look, even if that hadn't happened today, if I'm right on the cusp of that's all it took to accomplish what was a major life goal, right? And knowing going into it and having people around me say, yeah, you take this on. I can still remember my father-in-law, for a year and a half, 7 days a week, we worked on that building. So we drove from our house in the Perry District out there and back every day, and we'd bullshit on the way there and back. And on the rougher mornings, or after something didn't go well, he'd just look at me and go, "You sure you still want to do this?" And like he was like a big critic before we even started this company. Before his son even started that building, he was a critic of, and then quickly became like, he saw and became not only like a supporter, but like an avid participant in everything. And still today, conversationally especially, on everything, every ambition we've got, right? But for like 10 years, he reminded me, you could still back out. It was like,
it's not too late.
Like,
was he a business owner himself?
He was, yeah.
And is is he retired?
Yeah,
now?
he is. He is a business owner. Yeah, nice. He owns half of a Subway in Alaska.
Oh, okay.
A Subway and a movie theater in Nome, Alaska, which if you've ever been to Nome, which I'm assuming you have not.
I haven't, but I know of it because of friends and a famous snowboarder that's from there.
Yeah.
That rides, what is that mountain called?
Right on the Bering Sea. Oh, Alyeska? That's at it. That's in Anchorage. But
there's a mountain out in Nome.
Yeah.
On the island there. Right? Because Nome's like a little island
it's not an
peninsula type situation.
It's near a series of islands, the Diomede Islands, I think.
Yeah.
There are, I'm sure there's some spots around there. They probably do.
Eagle Ridge.
Eagle Ridge?
Eagle Ridge
to ask,
Mountain.
Our family, we just spent some time with them, actually. We're close with, my wife has cousins that live in Nome. And that's part of the reason why my father-in-law owns one up there. They were, when he moved to Alaska, I just had a conversation before I came here about this. So I was thinking we had that, but we did not.
Yeah.
My father-in-law grew up in Minnesota, and both my in-laws grew up in kind of rural western Minnesota. And then moved to Alaska when they were like in the 70s, when they were shortly out of college, and moved to Anchorage, but lived in Nome for some time. My wife, actually, she was born in Anchorage, but she lived in Nome, I think, first year or two. She was alive because they were living up there.
Yeah.
And it's a very remote area. Yeah. There's only boat or plane, and I don't think anybody boats there anytime soon, although they are putting in a new port, but that's more for like commercial stuff.
Yeah.
Commercial fishing out of there.
Yeah.
I think one of the TV shows, the crab fishing is often out of Nome. They will port there, some of them. But it's, it's the only movie theater in town. I don't know. It's probably a town of maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people, something like that.
Yeah.
It's basically an Alaskan village, like many others up there. They happen to be on the coast, so it's a cool area though. Their camping is so different than here. It's like tundra, so it's like going to another planet when you're up there. And when we haven't been up there in a few years, but we went up there for probably 5 or 6 years in a row in the first half of our marriage, and the sun never set, so it's just like 4th of July weekends are a little different up there.
I bet.
Yeah, in a good way.
Easy to.
A lot of ATV. I mean, it's the same kind of stuff you do around here, but.
All right, but it's Alaska.
Yep.
Everything's bigger in Alaska.
Yeah. It's just like a certain kind of freedom. Like when you're a long way from any, normal civilization. It's not like we're getting away with anything, but you just feel like you could get away with anything. It's like we're not doing anything, but I feel like I'm way on another planet. Yeah.
That's funny. That's actually the first time I've heard that kind of analogy about Alaska. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I know that's why a lot of people end up going up there too, is for that. Like,
it's just so vast. Like you don't really realize how far away you are from everything till you get on a flight that took you forever to get there, and then it takes you another forever to get. It's like, holy cow.
How far up there it is, Huh.
Very remote.
Yeah, I definitely want to go up there for snowboarding. I pray that can happen in my life. That would be an unreal experience to ride up there. So
I'll have to ask around a little for you. My wife's family wasn't huge into skiing and snowboarding. They definitely have acquaintances that are certain family members, but I'm not big into that, so I probably don't poke my head.
I actually wonder how big the culture is up there of people. I know that people go up there, crazy people from all over the world go there, but how many people are raised there?
I don't care what anybody says. Anchorage, my wife is a city person. Yeah. She grew up in Anchorage. She is a city girl. Yeah. Through and through.
Right.
I mean, it's a city. Mm-hmm. It's like being in Spokane. It's a very similar culture to this, I think. Or Reno, I think, has a similar, Seattle's a little different. Yeah, maybe Seattle 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Yeah. Probably had more in common with Anchorage today. But it's, what is it, like There's like a little ski. I forget all these spots. Right where Alyeska's at, Girdwood is like this little ski town that is like really cool. Right outside Anchorage. It's the most common spot most people probably go to, but it's a big ski bum culture for sure.
Yeah, but I think a majority of those people aren't from Alaska originally. Is what
I bet you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the
I don't know,
Anchorage in local Alaska is like off the charts.
Yeah,
I mean it is. It was the most surprising thing to me was going there and like seeing it's so unique. It's not really a rival. They're friends of ours. They have a cidery up there called Double Shovel, which is like a deer rack, I guess it's called a double shovel. That is enormously successful in Alaska, and they make good cider, decent cider. But like their local scene and following is like, you start a business in Anchorage, you're going to do well. Like it's not easy to do there in many ways because I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Like I got to get a truck from Yakima to here. They've got to get stuff barged. And I mean, it's a whole nother level of commitment on some things there, but their cider is in every bar in Alaska and they're very, locally minded, which is awesome. I mean, if you have a tie into that culture and you don't even need a tie into that culture, it's also one of the most, so there's something about Alaskans that I did not know and have experienced. It's like, you treat almost everybody like family and you start to learn like we were talking about the remoteness. Like you start to depend on other people all the time, like everybody. So like I even noticed like what would be normal, like societal divides, like financial or otherwise, like don't exist with people from there because you never know who you're depending on is my theory.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law and I have talked about this before about the culture there. And so when people come into there, it's like going to a Midwest town or something, I think with that stereotypical niceness. Because it's like, well, you are in the middle of nowhere. And you're a long way from Seattle or wherever else. You can't just hop in a car and get there.
Yeah, no, there's I forget what that law is called, but there's a certain point where, you know, once certain amount of people live together, they start dividing their mind from being able to connect with people. But like in a smaller communities, what you're talking about is everybody knows they kind of have to depend on each other. So they're way more open and friendly to each other because in their deep mind, they're like, I might need these people. You know, we're out here in this environment where there's nobody coming but maybe my neighbor and I might, you know, or whatever the case is.
Well, you develop like a whole different sense of compassion because you've been there. Like almost everybody that I know has been stranded somewhere in Alaska. So like your mind goes right back to that. I mean, that's a positive trauma, right? Where you're like, oh shit, I remember what that's like. Stop, you know, help my. We've all been there. I mean, it's not just Alaska that this is possible, but it's a weird dynamic that's like a little stronger. Like that beat is a little more there,
which is special. That's cool.
Yeah. You'd be welcome there.
Yeah, I think I would love to just visit there. I mean, but snowboarding there would be the dream for sure.
Well, you're a good snowboarder. I think you could have fun.
Oh yeah, and I know it'd be scary. I mean, I know, you know, some of the biggest pros that go up there, they're still scared every time they ride. But I want that. I love that. I want that exhilaration of being terrified of going down this mountain right here. You know, 'cause
I only like that when I know I have the talent to get through it.
Yeah, and I think
and
I
that's
do.
Something I don't.
I think I do. I think my freestyle riding capabilities are there, but that's to be, you know, that's to be told for the future. It's not going to happen this year.
I'm realizing I get some of the same exhilaration, or have gotten back on the engineering side of taking on like challenging projects that like I kind of left doing engineering work with get a little bit of a bitter taste just because I was just sick of it. Yeah. And it was a lot of things, but you know, now we've also started an engineering firm many years ago, but it's mostly just my brother-in-law's work, and I help when I can, and I'm basically a passive partner that assists occasionally, but it's not like my everyday thing. But Trailbreaker, thankfully, knock on wood, that it doesn't change, but is stable in a way that it doesn't require my constant attention like it did the first 10, 12 years. And I don't mean that any other way than I've also learned that, if you want to see empowered people, you have to empower them and see what they do with that and help in that way. But it keeps me away in a healthy way. And another opportunity, thankfully, which was kind of thought as a long-term plan going into this, is something I might get back into. But I think everybody around me knew that I needed a little break from that. And it's not really about me, but just, my role in how I spend my time with things. But, taking on some bigger projects is gets all the anticipation of doing it. And then the stress, this is more strewn out over weeks and months, maybe, of agony, but it's to me, it's a similar mental trigger as, trying to go down a harder or a new path on a kayak, right? We talk about, I like mine in the water as opposed to on the snow, those thrills and physical moments. But
yeah, I love the water too.
But it's,
the water, man.
It's another one of those, when your work environment can provide some of these same stimuli to your brain, a lot of us resist that because it's job, it's work. But if you somehow can flip that, and almost, I'm convinced it almost doesn't matter what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I think we all, that's a little more philosophical on how people struggle or what they struggle with.
I love, that's what I love talking about, because I am on the other side right now. I've been struggling with finding that joy in my work and getting into that flow state.
So I was thinking on the way down here as I was driving about you specifically, but I think you need to maybe just share offline or something with somebody or myself, what are your technical skills? What can you do and make money at right now? Mm-hmm. What are the things that you would bring either? It doesn't matter if you're working for somebody else or you're doing it for yourself. I don't even give a shit about that.
Right.
Just what are the things you could be doing or can do that have, and so evaluate that, but then where can your curiosities lead you in the next decade or so to develop skills that you want to put you in that spot that you want to be in, or the kind of role you want to be in? What is missing there, and how do you obtain that? Mm-hmm. Skill, right? I call it skill, but it's it's more than just your ambition, right? It's I can actually do this or that, right? It could be painting a picture. It could be graphic artwork, right? I was going to ask you about some stuff along those lines before I leave today.
Well, I think for me right now, I'm finding that more and more, and from what people have told me, is my skill is in my voice, what I do with my voice, how I do this podcast. I've had a lot of great feedback from this podcast. And I've had a lot of people over the years, way, way before I started the podcast, telling me that I should be in public speaking and different things, because I think I have a real authentic way that's relatable to most people that listen to me, to explain the hardships of dealing with life and how to overcome them, because I'm not somebody that ultimately knows it's easy as just hey, you just need to switch your mind, and because I don't think that's relatable to most people. Most people, it's really, really hard for them to get out of their mind. And these guys that are motivational speakers that just say, hey, all it is just yeah, but it's deeper than that. Psychology is way deeper than that. And for those guys, they
sometimes
can switch.
Just we all have different ability levels.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And there seems to be a lack of understanding from others about that. And
there's always development in that. And, I have had a very unique life in terms of I just have this curiosity about like everything, like really broad. Mm-hmm. And so every little experience I had, I just like dove in and learned about. And my wife says, you broad but not specialized. I was like, yeah, maybe I get bored easily, but I'm like not bored with these things. It's not that. It's just a desire to learn more. That's fine. One, not everybody's going to have that same level of like, I don't know, geekness in a million different subjects that you really want to learn and be not like the leading expert, but like a doer in. Like I could go get a job as a carpenter. I could go get a job as an electrician. I could go do, like, I'm proficient in areas, engineering, obviously. I could probably work in a kitchen. I like, that might be the one thing that I wish I was a little better at right now. Yeah. But, it's really not where my time is best served either, right? So then balancing that, which is what of all the things you could be good at or you are good at, but sometimes that's limited for some folks. And by our own admission or their own admission, you're not just going to get a new mentality and fix all your fucking problems in life, right? There might be outside influences that you're going upstream against that you had no control over, either traumatically in the past or in your current existing state, right? And I think that's a proper evaluation of where you're at is reasonable. And what you're talking just in general, but I'm, for you, I'm just a little curious where you think you would take that. Like, what would you do with that?
With speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, public speaking, podcasting.
Well, let me ask it a different way. Do you see a role, little known fact, typically this is true, in most organizations, those with that kind of skill set are in a very desirable world too. So like that skill could be applied to a million things in my mind. Not that you have that interest necessarily, but I'm curious if you've thought about it in terms of like, what would a dream job look like for you? Sounds like working for yourself.
No doubt.
Okay.
There's nothing outside of that.
I knew the answer to that.
Yeah. No, but and that's good. It's good for the listeners to hear because I don't know. I think this is cool. A different little reverse in the interview, because I think it's important.
You have a really good story.
Yeah,
I do. You have a great story, and I think your story isn't really the thing that I'm always intrigued with. It's your story also made who you are, which is what, when people say that, they're looking at the result of your lived experiences. And, somebody might sit here and go, oh man, that, so cool. I wish I had that. You're like, not if you had to go through the shit I had to go through to get this. I don't think you would enjoy that much.
I don't think I'd wish whatever it takes for me to get to where I want to go. I wouldn't wish anybody to have to go through it, but also knowing maybe it's a necessity. But the mental torment and shit that I've experienced internally, like it's been hell, at times. So yeah, this is my journey, but because I've been so low internally in my internal state, in that mental health state, like I really have a relatability to a lot of people that really do struggle and have a hard time getting out of hard circumstances. And I'm an encourager, people.
There's a little bit of tapping into optimism when you do that, right?
Yeah, like I talk about the hard stuff, but there's always the hope and the optimism that hopefully we can all figure it out. I can figure it out. Like I've never given up on that.
You don't have nobody has a traumatic past and a positive future without a positive approach to how they live their life, right? Yeah. And I don't know what that is a result of. I'm I'm not trying to dive down those rabbit holes ever really, but I get it, and it's like I get a kick out of these kinds of conversations a lot, and I know that's one of the reasons why we get along so much. But anyway, I don't know. I have, since our last conversation, I've been a little bit curious what, as we said before, what this year looks like for you. And
Yeah.
along these lines, I think it's awesome. I mean, this is
Well, I'm like, one thing for me right now is like, I'm probably going to take a part-time job or look for some side work just to, get some alleviation for my finances income. And I'm still going to run city chapters and third kind design, but like just to give myself a little break probably. I'm still working on the businesses, but like, I just know I need to switch some things up. And so if I have, I know this is the one thing against like becoming rich, being a business owner, but it's like you don't trade your time for money. But right now it's just like maybe that is a solution, short time for me to get back on track and to have certain finances, obligations alleviated that I won't have to worry about, so I can have more creative energy to focus on my businesses, because like my creative energy is always feeling zapped because I'm always worried about how I'm going to make the businesses work, which is not the mind state you want to be in when you're running a business. You don't want to be always worried about how you want to be thinking about opportunities and seizing opportunities. But, through time and just, I guess, ultimately some failures in business, it's like my mind is in this survival state mode, and that's also something I've been fighting with. And I know that, I think it's part of the journey. I know, and I've done the research with a lot of people that ended up becoming very successful businessmen. They all went through something like this with their businesses or failed businesses, that they ultimately had to go on to something else. And so I know it's not like just something that I'm going through. It's not every great person that becomes great started off great. In fact, most of them fail a lot before they figure it out, and so
yeah, you're 34 helps. Years old. You're fine. You're gonna be fine.
I just thought I was, naive, young, naive man, thinking I would have it a lot more figured out by now. And and then of course we live in a world where, you think you see people that have it figured out, but they got their own struggles and stuff. But from what the world shows you, social media, the facade, it's like, oh, I'm not good enough. Maybe I do need to just quit this shit and give up on my dreams, because I know that I feel like, honestly, at this age that I'm at, this is when men do give up. It's kind of like in this area that I'm in. You either give up on your dreams now or you stick it through and see them fucking happen. And I think a lot of people at this age.
But, I think you also, there's a word, realism. Right. Yes. And realism for you is different than realism for me. Right. It just luck of the draw. I have a term. It's called the Lucky Sperm Club. Some people are in this Lucky Sperm Club. Yeah. And it's there's nothing that says that because your parents or somebody were very successful and started a business that you were born to inherit. And there's nothing that says that person can't be even better or much worse than their predecessor, right? We often hear the more cliche story of somebody who dropped the ball or was, just a cokehead and, spent the fortune or whatever, but, or was the screw off and eventually took over the company. But until, once the old man left, it went downhill, that kind of stereotypical thing. Or it could be that somebody was really ambitious and took that business to another level. And that story also exists, although you don't hear about it quite as much. No, I think that does happen.
It does happen.
And or it could be something not like that at all, right? Where I never had that opportunity, and I was very lucky in my ambition was paired with a partner that had, other ambitions that matched well, and we play off each other very well. But that's, like, I tell people, like, don't use that as the model. Like that, like Brian and I are weird dudes. Like, you're not going to meet two people that are kind of opposite in a lot of ways, but very much alike in all the important ways, and can value each other's input, even in the worst. Like, really good business partners, no issue will ever happen there that we can't get through. I know that. We're also family, but weren't. But that's not like a model to follow. It's just how shit fell, right? And so there is a point, though, even in those situations where evaluation comes around. Like right about the same age you are now, I was probably a couple of years older than you when we had to move or what became Trailbreaker. And I was like, that was 2 years of vast uncertainty, where I was looking at all the effort, I continue to put in, what that would look like in the future. What, we're talking about major investments and just scrambling the head in terms of what, like, this isn't what I planned, and I don't even know what I planned, but this isn't it. Stresses that come along with that, career changes for spouses, that kind of stuff gets complicated. And, there's no clear path through it until you're already through it looking back. So know that. Yeah. And I think that part of the reason why I asked the question about the skill set is, like, I think you would benefit maybe from, at this point in your career, diving into a business a little bit and seeing different versions of that, both in maybe where you would work or the kind of clients you might end up working with under that. And I'm being very broad, I get that. But starting to expand your understanding of how things work around you in a way to help your own self get there sooner. Learning a little bit more about maybe, I'm hearing finance, like learning more about opportunities that are there and maybe risk that's worth taking if you've got a good plan together, and taking a few years to get that together to get a legitimate, maybe it's a bank loan or something to fund an actual project that you want to see take off. And it could involve, I want to go on a speaking tour and I need to market it. So I need this money for this. And I'm just playing it for instance, but like that kind of ambition, you're like, well, I'm going to need a couple of years to plan this. Well, you're certainly going to be working during that. I mean, that kind of thing can still spur something. I mean, when I can't tell you the number of times I told my wife, here's a job, I think I'm going to go take it because I'm stressing about money and this is how I think I can solve it. And it was just calm down, relax. Fortunately I had mentors around me that also, taught me how to, I'm also kind of one of those people that just like, I wouldn't call it like, it's a little bit calculated, but I can move in an instant if I've convinced myself that that's the direction to go. I mean, I married my wife and I got married in 3.5 weeks of dating. So obviously I have a little bit of an inkling towards that, but
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess the moral of this discussion from my vantage point is I want to hear more about what kind of jobs you're thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, I don't really, plan on doing anything full time, unless it was like a job that I'm like, this is going to help me incredibly more and being in my purpose, which that could be nonprofit work.
There are more ways of doing that now than there ever have been.
Yeah.
Because one, a lot of organizations are desperate for help.
Yeah.
I do this professionally. I do this as an engineer where I go to organizations and I say, look, you don't even employ an electrical engineer perhaps, so why don't you just hire us to do it when you need the work done?
Yeah.
And you don't have to carry us as employees. We can work on project basis or part-time, however it depends on the organization and what their needs are. But there's so much need that, I've been thinking in my head, I'm like, it's time for, like, everybody's an independent business owner now. Maybe some of us need to get back to the workforce just part-time to, get our whole economy over the hump here. And, and also remind ourselves what a normal paycheck looks like. Cause that's something you kind of forget too.
Yeah, for sure.
There are benefits to that.
I think so. Right. And, it's just about me doing what I have to do, I think, right now as well. And, just trying to be open to a different trajectory at this time to maybe help even stimulate some ideas from my own business, kind of like what you're talking about, being in a business and learning about some more things that I could apply within my own business.
When I went to culinary school, one of the motivations for me was just learn. Like I I did not care if I came out of that to be a chef. Like that was not, I had no real ambition to own a restaurant at that time. That was not where my head was at. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I just wanted to learn. And then I got a job, you know, I was in a pizza place, Zeke's Pizza, which is a big chain. They're here now.
I know, yeah.
And so you learn, you know, I learned a lot about how they did their operation, just working there in the dough room and observing and helping do prep. And like, I took that as like, oh, I'm learning more here. And I don't know when this is going to pay off, but I can tell you all of those experiences, just how they handled certain things made me more organized when we were designing our kitchen, you know, 10 years later, which I never would have envisioned. But, oh, well, I'm really glad I actually embraced my time every way I could when I was doing this so that I could have as much opportunity to learn these things as possible. In culinary school, my favorite, they do rotations. My favorite one was the inventory, which nobody liked to do. These are mostly kids out of high school. And at the time, there was a big push for like worker retraining coming out of the 2008 timeframe. So you had guys who were like carpenters and masonry guys who were in culinary school because they'd go to school for free instead of being on unemployment, basically, which was interesting. So you're around all these guys and women that are varied backgrounds, but the inventory room is like the boring, oh, there's no cooking in there. I'm like, yeah, but you learn how you buy stuff and how you organize it and what you look for in purchasing and like, just, I don't know, if I'm going to own a restaurant, that's what I want to learn how to do. And, you know, just embracing those, what seem like the less desirable thing to be doing, but maybe finding a role or some kind of a niche that you can actually like, okay, well, I'm going to learn about this a little bit and develop this skill set and see if when I fold all these together, you're somebody who is not above a master plan in your life, I believe. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like you're trying to shape this.
Definitely. Yep. Definitely am. Just, like I've been saying to people for a while now, like, building a business is building yourself. Like when you're working on a business or not, it's like a reflection of what you're working on within yourself. And there's a lot of like correlation of how your business reflects where you are currently, you know, and so
a lot of gut check moments.
Yeah.
Like, what am I made of here?
Yeah.
Things.
Oh, yeah.
How do I get through this? Oh, boy.
It's basically all it is at all times, you know.
A little bit.
Yeah. So.
A little bit.
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll get closing it up. I wanted to ask you just like last question, to share 3 things that you think are essential, critical behaviors or principles of being a business owner. One that ultimately is successful, of course.
It again is cliche, but hardworking.
Yeah. I mean, you can't get around that. I
just felt like it's like that's a thing, right? Like and
hard work.
Dedication, I think, is a word I would throw in there. I would even say that differently than hardworking, because you can be a hard worker but not want to answer the call at 3 a.m. if there's something that happened, you know, or decide that I'm going to make the trip over there. I'll just drive there and back. I'll get it done. You know, let's just do it. You know, just because you're a hard worker doesn't mean you're willing to do some of the little things. So those are 2 things. I'm more and more thinking that you've got to be an optimist or have a positive approach, because nobody else is going to want to work for somebody who is a pessimist or is always looking at the negative side. And I know my team always has pointed out, they're like, you're always just you. You know, you're not, if something bad happens, you're still you. I'm like, well, that's part of my job too, right? And part of what happens up here, it's not that I don't get pissed about it or that I don't have to process very quickly the anger emotions and move on to the next emotion, because that doesn't help, right? And I learned that long ago, and we do live and learn, but also like problems need to get fixed. So the only thing that does that is us. And the only way we do that is if we work together. And if somebody's pissed off, it's going to work less.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be the guy that makes sure the ship is moving forward. And I've probably always been a little bit of that, but maybe more conscious of it, or more telling myself to remind myself to do that on occasion. To be you don't golf, do you?
I don't. I mean,
it doesn't matter if you golf or not. But if you're a golfer, this has been my theme of the year, and it's working, so I'm keeping it going. But if you're a golfer, you can get very caught up in anybody that sucks at golf, and I would put myself in that because I'm not getting paid to play on TV. So we all suck at golf, right? And goes through a round of golf and is just looking at their score, right? But you start playing better golf, and we all know this. Every golfer out there knows this. You start playing better golf when you just worry about the shot in front of you. And I started telling myself on the golf course, and I started shooting better scores, relatively speaking, or at least in my head I did. Just shoot a good shot. Just shoot a good shot. Just focus on what's ahead of you right here, and just have as much positivity and influence this or the next thing I go to, or even if it's at home or with my dog, like I just remind myself, like, shoot a good shot. Just don't worry about everything else. Just, this is the only thing in front of you right now. Shoot a good shot. And you're going to be happy about when you look back on a year or a month or even a day. I'm going to be happy about what happened that day. And that's, not that I need that always, but that has been really good for me to focus on just the next thing. That's all that matters. Just do it really well. Pretty soon you're doing everything well.
Yeah.
Or better. And if you don't, that's okay. You know what? Shitty shots happen.
But then you have the next
You got
moment.
the next one. And, golf, the one thing about golf that I really like is that kind of element. You've got to learn how to recover. You're not good enough for everything to go perfect. And quite frankly, there's some things out of your control.
Yeah.
You can't control everything. If you could, somebody would be making hole-in-one on every single shot they hit, right? We all know that's not humanly possible, except that you're human. But, all we can do is recover. And owning a business is, like, to your point, all about the recovery, because shit happens every day. Not every day, but it certainly can on any given day.
That's for sure. Yeah, that recovery. And I have played a few games of golf, but that's why I am more interested in that game now, because you have to learn how to be patient. It's
a mental game.
Be present. It's
very mental game.
It's a mental game.
It's about confidence. I mean, it's certainly about ability. There's no question.
For sure.
But I have watched, for people who are athletic, I only take that so far, because I watched my mother-in-law, who's in her 70s now, probably 6 years ago, took the game up. Had never played golf really in her life. And she kicks her husband's ass on a regular basis. So, and she is like 5 foot nothing, maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. So she is somebody who has learned to play within her limits, and she just hit good shots, just hit good. She's my little, I'm her mentor on the golf course, and my specialty's putting. So with her, and I enjoy that game more for this stuff, not because I expect to shoot a good score. I love the mental game within
the analogies
it.
Of life.
Really,
in it.
no matter what your ability level, you can always do better. You can always have a positive attitude, and you see the results of it occasionally. I mean, like any golfer, any shitty golfer, like most of us are, there are limitations to our patience.
Oh, for sure.
It's golf.
And that's life too, right? That's the whole principle, I think, what I realized with golf is, like, if you can master how you handle this game, like, it helps you master how you handle life,
I think there's some truth in that.
Yeah. And then I've been playing a lot of chess, just on the app lately. And that's actually, it's been funny. My brother, he'd been playing it a lot. So I started picking it up because we played some real chess. And he beat me, and I was like,
well, you triggered a little competition.
Usually I'm pretty good at chess, but now with this chess app, everybody's that plays is getting a lot more time in. I just been ignoring it because I don't want to be on my phone too much. I haven't
played that game in a long time,
But I love it. I've been and just accepting, learning how to take a loss, because you're not gonna win all those games, and at first I was getting, frustrated and upset, and I was just like, brother, like it's a game. I think life is a game if you can figure out, in the aspect of like how the decisions you make depend on you leveling up or going back or having to restart.
You do make decisions.
Yeah.
And decisions do matter.
And being okay with, like, in chess, sometimes you make a blunder move. Like, you see what you want to see.
Yeah.
But you don't see what the other side has going on. And so perspective is huge.
Yes.
And it just has helped me with awareness, patience, and also just realizing, like, I'm going to make a wrong choice at times and learning how to be okay with that. Hopefully you don't make in life stupid major mistakes.
You've also seen that almost some of the worst decisions we can make in life, and I include myself in that, are still recoverable.
Yeah, I've been really blessed to have been still afforded every opportunity to do what I want in life, and but I've certainly, and that's also why I feel like there's something for me to do here, because I really have been saved from ultimate demise, like situations that, could have ended my life, another person's life, some really scary stuff that I truly feel, because I don't know how else to explain it based upon, deeper experiences I had in those moments, that something is looking out for me, but something's also trying to destroy me. And I'm, whether that's my deep subconscious that I'm battling with, and I've been coming to this understanding that our mind is so incredibly powerful, and it dictates so much of our reality and how it operates around us. That's my belief.
Like I said, it's really hard to. I don't see a lot of successful people who are just grumpy assholes. I mean, it just doesn't. When you really, there are certainly some personalities that can come across that way, but when I think about normal business, not people on TV and all that bullshit, like people that I interact with that own businesses, that run businesses, even if they don't own it, but they run or are piece of an organization, generally, those that have the positive frame of mind and see things as positively as possible. I mean, I know it's cliche, but like that's like a pretty key piece to the puzzle here. Having the other one, you're not going to go forward with that mentality. It is that simple on some level.
No, I loved your last of the three, the optimism part, and I think that was a unique answer, and how you approach, and think about being successful, and the way you described it, I think was pretty powerful, in understanding a key element of how to handle just the shit that's going to happen, because if, I think for me, I've been negative, or I don't think I know I handle things that don't go right in the past negatively. I've gotten better over the years about that, but I used to always be very negative or feel attacked or, whatever, and be reactive to shit going wrong, and just feel like I can't do anything without shit going wrong, or, and so like, that's something that I've been
you're not the only one.
No,
you're
I know that.
Not the only one.
I know that, but that it just comes back to like, that's going to happen. That's never going to
get past that as soon as possible.
It's never going to stop happening. But it's all about how you react to it happening. Exactly. That determines everything else, That's it. And so
easy to say, harder to do, right?
For sure. Definitely. Man, the better that you handle it, the less that stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or at least
you learn,
you're not
right?
going to feel that same way about those things happening, at least,
You cold plunge, you learn how to breathe, you learn how to handle physiological changes that happen when you get, spun up or something. I mean, for me, these are
huge.
Things you can piece together, and that's where it's like I cold plunge as well in the river every day, and it's I tell people, I'm like, actually, it's the mental element that you benefit, because you learn like some of these things, and then when you combine some of the physiological things that you're learning to breathe better, like if you're focusing on that, right, and you learn how to not hyperventilate, and you learn calmness, or you teach yourself calmness, and then when you have moments of challenge, sometimes it takes a little bit to remember that and connect those dots back together.
For me too, it's one thing I've been learning a lot because I do it every day in my cold plunge at home now. And that's another thing I'm bringing into this year about just making changes.
Do it every day.
Making my changes. And so, one is like accepting pain, like, and also choosing to put yourself into pain. Because in
discomfort, certainly.
It's pain.
It is pain.
Fucking pain. I mean, I'm getting in like 34, 30, 36 degree water. It's fucking pain. Mm-hmm. And, training the mind that you're going to go do that, and in business,
but the other thing you don't just get pain, you get exhilaration on the back end.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't do it again if you didn't remember that you got that, right?
But
and it's worth it. You wouldn't do it if it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is the choice of submitting yourself into a painful situation when you are in business. You have to, that you're about to go do something that you may not enjoy, or you definitely know you're not going to. But on the other side, once you get it done, you're going to get the benefits of completing that project.
Calling a customer about something you or somebody else messed up. Mm-hmm. And knowing that call has to be made and has to be made like in the next hour.
Yeah. And
there is no other way around. This is going to hurt. It's just a matter of how and why, and do I have a skill that will, how do I develop a skill to soften this blow? Mm-hmm. And that's one of a million examples, obviously.
So it's been helping me a lot with just different things of life and business, and just like, man, life, it has pain. It's just how you deal with it. And choosing to do the hard thing, like cold plunging, is just a physical act of, very physical, of course, of submitting yourself into something that's going to be painful, but knowing on the other side you're gonna get benefits from that, and so that's another big thing that's been helping me.
I think it's I spent every day this year. That was my challenge to myself, to do that. I wasn't here every single day, but I did every day I could.
Yeah.
And so as I talk to others who have now kind of started doing this, and these conversations, it's interesting to see business. Both of them, the two I'm thinking of, are business owners, and just in a very short period of time, they've had the same exact kind of feedback. So it's like there's something there. Whether the business ownership, somebody might be listening to this, or in a conversation with us, because that's what we geek out about, but it really could pretty much pertain to anything. I'm convinced.
Oh,
that
for sure.
In terms of barriers in your, definitely. I mean, you could shift that mentally in many different ways.
Oh, yeah.
I particularly, like yourself, maybe felt as I'm sort of experiencing or observing these things about my own experiences, that this is the direction I can take this, right? For me to benefit. This is the thing I need in my life, because so much of my life revolves around that, which is fine. But others, I don't know, it could be any number of things. That psychological thing, it's amazing how that never goes away. No. You'd think you do something that many times in a row and you'd be like, I got it.
Yeah,
it never changes. Something
and
about
that's why you have to do it every day, pretty much too, because it keeps your mind in that state of like,
Agreed.
And I still have a lot more days to do to probably even get towards the real mental benefits I'm seeking. But, within a short amount of time, a few months, I've definitely...
That's patience too.
I choose to go to the gym more. I don't talk myself out of certain things more. I'm still, working on a lot of stuff. I always will be, I guess. But yeah, it's been really good, man. I love it.
You're... nobody notices things. I notice my hair getting gray when you look at yourself every day in the mirror, right? Same thing. You don't notice the change, but as somebody who does only speak to you, a handful of times a year for the last few years, I've noticed a positive element from each time. Not that you were in the best space every time we met each other, based on the subject matter we dove into, but in recent times, your focus. I mean, the snowboarding thing especially, when I see a lot of it through social media, but just knowing you were like diving back into that, and I feel like you're kicking yourself that you didn't do this, when you were 18 years old or something, and find a way to pursue that. But, that's one of the things that sparks you. But there are many, I think, that are not as obvious to you as they are maybe to an outsider. So just keep doing what you're doing is what I would say.
Well, thank you. Those.
Not that you need that. But.
No, I do. I do need that. It's good to be acknowledged and know that others are seeing progress too. So thank you. Thank you for your time, sharing your wisdom on business and just your kind of life journey in business and everything. I think there was so much great content in there for people to learn from about just even starting a business and kind of the mentality that really has to go into that. So yeah, man, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right.
Good to see you, brother.
All right. That's City Chapters Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby J. And this chapter is with Trent Maier from Trailbreaker Cider. They're out in Liberty Lake, Washington. All right. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.